Now, taking a look at so much happening, you mentioned that there's so much happening, especially in the industry. Looking at environmental, social, and governance,
Hmm.
and in particular sustainability, these have really taken center stage in the industry. We see now that airlines commercially are committing a lot more to, for example, sustainable aviation fuel, to acquiring more SAF and its utilization as well. Now, looking at that, are you already seeing an impact, for example, in the leasing and aircraft industry, considering ESG and sustainability?
SAF is great, but the production of SAF is limited. And until there's more production, the cost of SAF is relatively higher than the cost of Jet A1 fuel. Um, so as we'll see more SAF production, hopefully there will be a decrease in the cost, and then everybody can use it, and that's great news. But before SAF, and there is a discussion that is not prevalent in the dialogue. Do you want to invest in a new plane all the time, making planes' life grow short from 25 years to 20 years to 18 to 12, or maybe less? I don't know. Which means limited reinvestment through maintenance into the asset. And sure, you'll get new generation planes all the time, but at what cost? Are you going to keep producing planes so that, irrespective of the cost of production, irrespective of the investments that are already in place to perform maintenance on aircraft, and those maintenance, they bring down the consumption of fuel. They bring down also a lot of the operational costs. The planes are upgraded regularly, so they fly better, farther, and they cost less on maintenance side too, over time. Although there is a counter argument that sure, because over time they age, then they cost more into maintenance. That's true too. The two are not incompatible. But by operating planes from a flexible service company like Avia Solution Group Airlines, you actually are able to, most airlines are able to reduce their overheads, reduce the fleet, reduce the number of the staff that they need on a full-time basis. But then there's planes that come into the peak times and that follow traffic all over the globe, which is what ESG is bringing to the world. Having AOCs in northern hemisphere and soon in the southern hemisphere, where you can actually have planes operating during the summertime in the northern hemisphere to bring more capacity to that market, and using those planes in the south during the northern hemisphere winter, which is the summer in the south. So now you have a fleet of 8 to 10% of the planes in the world that could travel back and forth. That brings flexibility, but also requires less planes to be manufactured. That requires flexibility with the crew that goes on those planes. That requires a lot of flexibility, but frankly, I think it's really compatible with ESG to have a greater use of ACMI by airlines in the north and the south.
Looking at still on this topic of ESG and sustainability, what's your assessment of the communication around it, especially in the ACMI industry?
There's limited communication about it, and it's generally not um, it's not yet a communication that it's a B2B communication. It's not yet communication towards the passengers, the consumers. It's hard to define how much communication there is really. But it's also, on the same token, there might not be a need to have that much communication because you deal with airlines that already know what ACMI is, they already know how it works. Everybody in the business is well sophisticated enough to understand what it means and how it happens. So the need for communication or for improved acceptance is more with the aviation authorities. A lot of these aviation authorities around the world are prohibiting ACMI. And this comes at a cost of their own economies. When you put a limit, such as 5 years or 10 years, for an aircraft to come into your country and be registered in your country, and you make it the law that you can only have planes registered in your country to be based in your country and operate with your pilots and with your colors, then a lot of players, a lot of investors in your country do not have the means to invest in those planes. So you are focusing all the energy onto one or two players, generally a state-owned company. But the free market doesn't happen anymore. If you start opening up those age limits to import planes, and you start opening up the ability of your carriers to secure planes from outside players for a temporary season, to start investing in aviation, test, experiment, and then develop, you actually create more activity for your business, for your country, for your people. And that's what ESG is bringing to the world.
Now, something that might also be on the same tangent here. We've seen recently and over the last couple of years a lot of attention and developments towards new propulsion technologies. We've heard the mention of hydrogen-powered aircraft being able to operate within the next decade or so. How do you see this impacting the ACMI industry or leasing industry, for example?
So it creates new market for the leasing industry as long as the product works and it's adopted by the airlines. There's maintenance set up and everything works well. The group is already investing in those new generation planes. Smartlinks has MAX 8 in its fleet. It will grow MAX 8 planes into its fleet. Could be that some airlines in the future will operate A320neos or A321neos. There's a cost to all of these investments, and there's a benefit to all these investments. At this stage, there's already a lot of cost, a lot of investments into the neos and the maxes. Expecting that over the next 10 years, there will be hydrogen propulsion, and that planes will have to be retrofitted or planes will have to work differently. That's an expensive proposition, I say. But in the meantime, the group is adjusting to new technology planes and will be adjusting as fast as other airlines are adjusting their planes, so that the group keeps up with the generation of planes that will be flown, and the group remains in business with all these airlines that need to have that compatibility within the fleet.
Looking at the group, also still on the same topic, looking at the group and the industry in general, are they prepared for a transition to these type of technologies for aircraft?
Don't know if it's a question of preparedness. It's a question of contract with maintenance organizations that provide the service of maintaining those assets. And they are already there. Now, all these organizations are maturing their services. So it's also a question of, are the manufacturers producing enough to support these new generation planes? Components, spare parts, which are key to keeping those planes in the air. But it's not about the people. The people, they are qualified, super experimented individuals that know how to adjust and adapt, and they've been showing this all this time. So it's I believe the group is ready to have whatever generation of planes into its fleet, and the sophistication comes when you manage the maintenance, when you manage the operations. The group knows how to do this.
Also looking at new technologies coming in, we've seen a lot of developments with urban air mobility or eVTOL aircraft, and a lot of investment as well going into developing that. How soon do you think how soon till we see eVTOL transportation enter the market commercially?
I don't know. I wish I knew that. It's actually really exciting. You won't need that too much in Vilnius, I suppose. The airport is close enough to the city, especially with our headquarters that are within walking distance to the airport. I believe some of those eVTOL are being certified now. They're in the process. And I would not be surprised if over the next couple of years you'll start seeing little air taxis and with those electric eVTOL. The question is not so much if, when it's also, will you have a pilot on board or not? And that is going to be another tricky question.